Thank you very much for joining us today. On behalf of SPREP and SPC, I'm really happy to welcome you all to this second session of our presentation webinars on the 2022 Call for Regional Project Ideas from the Kiwa Initiative. Thanks to SPC and their interpreters, we have interpretation available in French and English. So before we start, I'll play a short video to explain a bit more how to use the system and ensure we have a smooth meeting.
When SPC holds meetings in English and French on conventional equipment, the interpreters receive good sound and this helps them in their work. But today, the event will be going out in remote mode over Zoom. We would kindly ask you to remember a few tips to help us make the meeting go ahead as smoothly as possible. Set up a place to work from without any background noise as much as possible, preferably no other people around, roosters crowing or dogs barking. Use a headset with a built-in microphone for good sound quality and avoid speaking from a distance straight to your laptop microphone in a crowded room. You must select the English or French interpretation channel to be able to join in. To rename yourself, please right-click on your name in the participants window. Rename yourself per the meeting protocols advised as necessary. Keep your microphone muted and your video off at all times when you are not speaking. If you are entitled to and wish to speak, please click the raise hand icon in the reaction bar. Unmute your microphone when given the floor or wait for the meeting host to unmute you. Bandwidth permitting, switch your camera on while you speak. This will help the interpreters. You can also enter questions or comments in the chat window when invited to do so. In case of technical issues, please contact the meeting host via the chat function. If you're ready, let's get started.
Thank you very much. So please turn off your microphones and cameras to help our interpreters. Select a language channel. Raise your hand if you need to speak, or please feel free to use the chat. And if you could also rename yourself in the participants list using your country or organization and your name, that will be very helpful. So before we start, we're going to have a little tour de table of the main speakers. So I'm Mathilde Kraft. I'm the Kiwa Project Development Coordinator at SPREP. And as you can see from my sweater, I am joining from France tonight. And I'll be co-hosting the meeting with Ludovic. Ludovic, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mathilde, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Ludovic Branlanzen, and I'm the Project Development Coordinator for the Kiwa Initiative as Mathilde, but at SPC. Good morning, everyone, again.
Thank you, Ludo. And tonight we have also two guest speakers. We have Espen Hornberg, SPC's Climate Change Advisor. Hi, Espen. Thank you for your time today.
Hi, good morning. My name is Espen Ronenberg. I'll be giving you a few updates on the outcomes of COP26 that are of relevance to the work that you will be discussing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Espen. And we also have Mrs. Vaine Wickman from the National Council of Women of Cook Islands. I don't know, Vaine, if you're already here. Oh, you get a chance to speak later. So today, briefly, our webinar agenda. Ludovic will first give a broad introduction about the Kiwa Initiative and the eligibility criteria of the 2022 Call for Regional Project Ideas. I'll then go in a bit more details on what is meant by nature-based solutions, for climate change adaptation in the framework of this call. We'll then move on to really the concept note template with Ludovic, and he'll explain a bit more the content of the concept note, as well as the submission process. And we'll conclude with presenting the technical assistance that's available to you, as well as having a bit of feedback from a beneficiary from this technical assistance for the previous 2021 call for projects. So after each presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers. So please feel free after each session to raise your hand or directly ask your question in the chat box, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So Ludovic, if you want to go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mathilde. So the idea, like Mathilde said, of this first presentation is to introduce to you the Kiwa Initiative in its whole, and we will have a specific focus, which is the main topic of our webinar today, a focus on the 2022 call for regional ideas. Before starting, I would like just to play a quick video from the Kiwa Initiative, an introduction video that you will be able to find on the Kiwa Initiative website that we will provide you the link a little bit later. Yeah, Mathilde, you can play. Thank you.
Climate change is among the major challenges faced by communities, especially in the Pacific. We urgently need to adapt. The Kiwa Initiative believes nature-based solutions help adapt to climate change and preserve biodiversity for the well-being of communities. Food security, health, disaster mitigation, economic resilience, closing the gender gap. Nature-based solutions for climate change adaptation come with many benefits. Let's support nature, humbly, responsibly, respectfully, with solidarity with the people of the Pacific. Today and tomorrow, let's build the Kiwa Initiative community together.
Thank you very much for listening. Oh, so next slide, please. Thank you very much. So let's have a quick overview of what the Kiwa Initiative is. As some of you may know already, Kiwa is promoting biodiversity protection and climate change adaptation using nature-based solution. Nature-based solution is one of the core concepts of the Kiwa Initiative, and this is why we decided to have a dedicated presentation after on nature-based solution. What is pretty innovative about the Kiwa Initiative is that it gathered together 5 international donors for the first time, which are France through the French Development Agency, European Union, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. The initiative has been officially launched in March 2020, and the 2022 call for regional project is the 3rd regional call. The total budget of the initiative is about 41 million euros so far. In terms of eligibility, the Kiwa Initiative is for 19 eligible Pacific Island countries and territories, including the 3 French territories. You can find the list on the Kiwa Initiative website. And Kiwa is offering also 3 main components that we'll get back to it in more details shortly after. First component, which is for small to medium-sized grant, ranging from 25,000 euro up to 400,000 euros, and a regional component, including a technical assistance and grants from regional project from 1.5 to 5 million euros. Overall, the expected outcomes of the Kiwa Initiative are to improve the funding access for nature-based solutions and climate finance, increasing the surface of sustainably managed natural land and marine areas, while reducing the community and ecosystem vulnerability to climate change, and strengthening coordination between the 5 donors, but also the Pacific countries and territories and the regional organizations. Next slide, please. So in terms of governance structure, so we do have a steering committee, of course, that is monitoring the overall initiative, including the 5 representatives from the 5 donors, plus 3 representatives from the region. For this year, we have French Polynesia representing Polynesia, we have New Caledonia representing Melanesia, and we have the Marshall Islands representing Micronesia. It's pretty important to highlight this, as these 3 representatives are voting members of the steering committee, meaning that this representative will vote for evaluating every regional project that will be submitted to them. The implementing partners, which are SPC, SPREP, and IUCN, are also part of the steering committee, but as observers. The overall initiative is managed by AFDs on the behalf of the other donors, and is supported with a Kiwa Secretariat dedicated to supporting them and making liaison with all the project partners. Next slide, please, Mathilde. So I would like just to give a quick overview of who is AFD, the Agence Française de Développement, the French Development Agency, who's playing a key role in the initiative. So it's a public and financing institution with banking activities that implement the French policy in the area of development and international solidarity. Its mission is to contribute to the economic, social, and environmental progress of very low and middle-income countries and French overseas territories, obviously. AFD is involved in more than 4,000 projects, which have a major impact in 115 countries and French overseas territories. In 2019, the group's commitment amounted for 14 billion euros worldwide. And its mission is carried out by providing loans, grants, expertise, or technical assistance. In the Pacific, AFD has an office, its regional office, based here in Nouméa, in New Caledonia, and also an office based in French Polynesia. It's covering the 15 Pacific countries and territories and the 3 French territories. The good news is that since 2018, AFD can work on adaptation to climate change and biodiversity conservation in 14 PICs and the French territories as well. And since 2021, AFD can also now intervene on mitigation to climate change. Next slide, please. So what AFD is doing in the initiative, like I say, is playing a major role, and it has 2 main roles in this initiative. First, as a main donor, because it's contributing of about 18 million euros out of the 41 million euros of the overall initiative, and is also in charge of the implementation of the initiative and responsible for managing all the funds, meaning that every project leaders that we have a project accepted through the Kiwa Initiative will sign a financing agreement with AFD. I will present this in my next presentation. To support them also, AFD has established partnership with key organizations in the region, SPC and SPREP for providing technical assistance within the regional component, and IUCN for the local component. AFD is assisted by a Secretariat, like I said before, is based also in New Caledonia, and its mission is pretty wide, is to provide technical, logistical, communication, administrative, but also financial support to the AFD management team based in Nouméa. Next slide, please, Mathilde. So in terms of component, what Kiwa has to offer, it is really important to understand that there is 2 different main components within the initiative. One, which is a local one for local projects. And this component won't be detailed today, as today we will focus on the regional one. But this local component is completely managed by IUCN Oceania, based in Fiji, with the support of their office in French Polynesia for the French territories. They're launching call for small to medium grants, So you have grants, very small grants from 25 to 50,000 euros. We do have also small grants from 50 to 100,000 euros and medium grants from 100,000 to 400,000 euros. These grants are for local civil society, international NGOs, but also for local and national public authorities. For your information, these calls have been launched this year and closed in September. They are now under the process of evaluation, and another call will be launched in early 2022. You will receive some information either from IUCN or from the Secretariat. In terms of the regional component, the main component of this one is providing grants for regional projects that will range with a budget from 1.5 million euros up to 5 million euros. And these grants are for local and national public authorities as well, regional organizations, and international NGOs. To support the eligible countries and territories to get access to these grants, to develop their project, and later on to implement the project and sharing the lesson learned, SPC and SPREP are working together very closely to provide this technical assistance. And Mathilde will present this component in more detail after. Next slide, please. So let's have a look at this 2022 call for regional IDs that has been launched in September. For those of you who may be familiar with the previous call, there is not much that has been changed. For your information, during the previous call, it was we had a specific focus, on coastal communities and management of natural resources. So far, we don't have any specific topic for this call, except, of course, implementing nature-based solution for climate change adaptation and biodiversity conservation. The beneficiaries, like I said, are mainly the national, local authorities and public institutions, which are targeting, but also the international NGOs and the crop agencies. In terms of budget, like I said, so any project that will be regional project that will be submitted to the initiative must have a budget between 1.5 to 5 million euros. There is no co-funding required. It is not mandatory. You can have a higher budget than 5 million euros if you find co-financing, and co-financing is obviously encouraged. To be qualified, and that's a really important point, to be qualified as a regional project, only 2 countries, at least as a minimum, or territories, needs to join to have this regional project, meaning that we can have only 2 countries and or territories. There is no specific requirement involving French territories or working together, but 2 countries or territories from the eligible list will be enough to be qualified as regional. Of course, you are more than welcome to develop projects with further partners, but that's just a minimum. In terms of calendar, we're looking at a 3 years implementation period. We will see a little bit later on what will be the process once your concept note will be accepted, but we can expect to start the project that will be submitted and accepted under this call in early 2023, and activities will have to be closed by March 2026. So again, it's a 3 years implementation period. The deadline for submitting the concept note is April 4th, Nouméa time, and we will have a look at what the concept note template is. I invite you again to have a look at the Kiwa Initiative website, which is kiwainitiative.org, where you can download the concept note, the terms of references, and also find any relevant information about the eligibility criteria or anything you need to know about this call. Next slide, please, Mathilde. So let's have a look at what would be considered as the key criteria and what the steering committee will pay specific attention to. First of all, it's really important to know and keep in mind that Kiwa is supporting concrete action on the ground and not supporting research projects for data gathering, for example, or pilot projects. Kiwa is looking at projects and activities that already demonstrated their efficiency in the past, and they need to be scaled up, for example. So the cost-efficient nature-based solution criteria will be very important. We need to see measurable and multiple benefits for climate change adaptation, but also for biodiversity and human well-being. These two sub-criteria of climate change adaptation and biodiversity are really important. For the climate change adaptation criterion, the project leaders must ensure to determine the context, the risks, the vulnerabilities, and the impacts associated with climate change. What is the situation now? What are the risks faced by the beneficiaries in terms of climate change? And how the project is intending to address this risk and vulnerability. The idea is to have Kiwa's projects contributing to climate change adaptation, and this needs to be reflected within your concept note. In terms of biodiversity sub-criterion, we will get back on it during the nature-based solution presentation, but the idea is basically to understand which type of NBS would be implemented. Will it be a preservation of functional healthy ecosystem or improvement of an ecosystem management through the management of human activities, or, for example, restoration of degraded ecosystem? In terms of project governance, Kiwa is really intending to have a strong involvement of the national authorities, public institutions, and local communities, as well as beneficiaries, from the design up to the evaluation stage. Ideally as project leaders, but at least they need to be well anchored in the project. Also, mobilization of new players are welcome, and we will be able to provide some sort of technical assistance to them. The gender aspect of the project will also be looked with great attention, meaning that any innovative approach in terms of gender and for also vulnerable groups will be seen as a plus in your concept during the evaluation. Also, you will have to define and highlight what will be the alignment and inclusion of your project with existing regional, national, or local public policy or frameworks. We are talking here about regional project again, so it's really important to keep in mind that it's important to have like a certain coherence and between the activities. We don't want to have parallel activities implemented in each of the countries involved without any real link. The cooperation must have an added value, and every activity is implemented in all of the countries must contribute to the same objectives. Next slide, but I think that was the last one for me at this stage. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Mathilde. So if you have any question now, feel free to ask them. I've seen that we already have some in the chat, so maybe I can start with one of them. And in case you want to take the floor, please feel free to raise your hand. First question from Frédéric Malaval. If the video of the presentation will be available later, yes. We will share with you all the PowerPoint presentation, and we will find a way also to share with you the record of this webinar or the one we conducted on Wednesday. Another question that I see from Patterson Chad, would you be able to share who the steering committee member representing Micronesia from the RME? Yes, of course. So it's Marshall Islands who representing Micronesia. Oh, and apparently someone replied in the chat already. Another question from Trina was how long country representatives serve in the steering committee. If I don't say any mistake, I think every year they intend to change. So next year we probably will have other representatives. And we can send you the list and the name and the contact of these 3 persons. And just looking if we don't have any hands raised in the chat so far. Not that I see, so I keep going with the question in the chat. On nature-based solution team, sustainable fisheries and or ocean governance accepted as project team. We will get back on this, Joanne, during the nature-based solution presentation, but of course, fisheries and ocean governance are part of the nature-based solution, yes. Do we have any other question? Apparently no, in the chat. If someone needs any clarification or anything, you can go, otherwise you will have 3 other Q&A sessions. So I must have been clear enough, apparently. Oh, yes, okay. We have another question in the chat from Malik. Will it be also local call for local projects? Yes, there will be in early 2022. I invite you to have a look at the IUCN Kiwa's website, where you can subscribe to a mailing list and you will receive some information about it. We have an answer from the Kiwa Secretariat about the representative from the Picts and their involvement within the steering committee has been inspired by the broad meeting from SPREP, and that's how we came out with this idea. Makelesi asking us if, yeah, I say there is no research type projects. Yes, that's right, Makelesi. What I intended to say is that Kiwa is not for just pilot or research projects. They want to have concrete action implemented on the ground, and they want to see, like I say, projects that need to be scaled up, for example, that received previous funding or that has been implemented at a smaller scale before. And so pure pilot and research project won't be considered as suitable for this call. We have a question from Anatira. If there is any financial support to prepare proposal? No, unfortunately, you don't have financial support, but we are here, SPC and SPREP, or the Secretariat, to support you in coordinating the proposal writing, or, for example, reviewing it, monitoring the development and the writing. But again, I will let Mathilde detail this during the technical assistance presentation. We have a question also from Noélie from the Institut Pasteur in New Caledonia. If community environmental health eligible to this Kiwa call? Yes, if nature-based solution for climate change adaptation as one of the main topics of the call. If you can demonstrate that the health issue are because of a climate change threat and that you will implement some sort of nature-based solution to address these risks, then that will be considered. And we would be pleased to have any bilateral discussion with you and any potential project leaders to answer any of your questions at any time you want. We have another question from Nicole Crane from People One Reef. Will the initiative consider research tool to promote NBS? That's pretty specific. I would say that's not one of the priority thematic, but we could have a look at it. And I invite you, Nicole, if you don't mind, to contact either Mathilde, myself, or both of us to discuss and have a look at your specific project ideas, if that's okay for you. We have many questions coming now. How strict is the committee with regards to proposal? Is a checklist available and system timeframe in place to vet proposal or resubmit? So we will have a look at the evaluation process a little bit later. What's the do and don'ts of the concept notes? We don't have a checklist available, but we will go through the main criteria that will be taken into account during the evaluation process, Martin. I hope that answered your question. We have another question from Patterson Shade. Are marine protected area management for protection of nearshore fisheries by community initiative qualify for Kiwa call? Yes, it could. Again, it's difficult to say just like this in a few words. We can have like closer look at your project ideas, but so far I will say yes. There will be a strong competition during the call. It's a specific call on climate change adaptation and nature-based solution. That's what we need to keep in mind. We have another good question. And sorry, I wanted also to add that once again, we will go through a little bit later, but I invite you again to download the terms of references of the call directly on the Kiwa Initiative website, and you will have all of these criteria that are summarized. But we will go through most of them a little bit later. I also have a question from Miguel. If a local NGO partner and private entity with national government are able to submit a proposal, profitable entity and private organization are not eligible to this call. They can be partners, but they are not eligible as a lead agency. For local NGOs, it would depend about your status and your activities. And in this case, for any local NGO, we would invite you to get in touch with the Kiwa Secretariat or with us, and we can make any link to specifically answer the question about your eligibility. Do we have any other questions? Yes, we have also Jean-Marie Virelala. Do you have application for project proposal? I don't really know what you mean about it, Jean-Marie. Jean-Marie, you would like to maybe application for the project proposal will be done like the template is available on our website. We will have a look at a summary a little bit later. And Mathilde, we have Omar from Palau Aquaculture who asking if we can go back to the previous slide, as he has some question about it. Yes, Omar, if you want to take the floor, you can go ahead. No. Okay, while I'm going to take another question then. Question from Estelle: if there is any communication content that are expected within projects to increase visibility of the actions and project impacts. Yes, of course, communication will have to be taken into account, and even beyond communication, exchange of good practices and lesson learned as part of the capitalization phase will be expected, obviously, yes. We have Viliami, sorry, asking that we mention assistance, funding or technical to international NGOs. For international NGOs, yes, you are also eligible to the technical assistance component. Depending on the expertise you will look at, it would be either SPC, the Secretariat, or SPREP that would be able to provide you any sort of assistance. So I invite you to get in touch with us, and we will see how we can do to answer your request. If everyone is okay with that, I suggest that we move forward to the next presentation. We'll have 3 more Q&A sessions to answer your question. And I hope that we'll be able to answer to some of your questions during the next presentation. Mathilde, maybe I give back the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludo. So hi again, everyone. I'm very happy to detail a bit more what we mean by nature-based solutions for climate change adaptation in the framework of the Kiwa Initiative and the school. So thanks to Ludovic and your questions, we've already answered a bit on that. So as Ludovic mentioned, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature is one of the main partners of the Kiwa Initiative. And so we're basing our work on all their their years of work on developing the concept of nature-based solutions. And so we're using their definition as actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively. So as Ludovic already mentioned, what the Kiwa Initiative really is about is actions on the ground. We understand for any environmental conservation action, prior research and assessment is key, and it's the key science to policy link. However, in your project design, please keep in mind that the balance should be towards action, and Kiwa does not fund research projects. So for Kiwa, we're talking about environment protection, management, or restoration that should clearly build the resilience of ecosystems and the communities that depend on them to climate change. So it must clearly address climate change adaptation, as well as biodiversity conservation. And of course, any, as mentioned on community health, for instance, any other co-benefits for society is really welcome, such as disaster risk reduction, economic and social development, human health, food security, or water security. And all these elements are, of course, valuable and should be included and highlighted in your proposal. So also, although climate change mitigation in itself is not a core objective of the Kiwa Initiative, in effect, nature-based solutions should cut greenhouse gases emissions and so contribute to NDCs. This is why this dimension is included in the concept note. So in the end, nature-based solutions must deliver both human well-being and biodiversity benefits. And so although these criteria are not part of the selection of the Kiwa Initiative and of the evaluation, you have here the gold standard that IUCN has developed for nature-based solution, and this could help you as well understand a bit more what is really the concept of nature-based solutions and help you in designing your activities. So you have, for instance, design at scale, inclusive governance, adaptive management, mainstreaming, and sustainability. And so these are all objectives and values as well of the Kiwa Initiative. So why nature-based solutions in the Pacific Islands? Well, of course, I think we're all a bit very aware of that. Sadly, we have a region that is particularly vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change with important biodiversity. But most importantly, we have a strong reliance of our communities on ecosystem services for food, water, coastal protection, but also cultural, religious, or traditional services. And so with nature-based solutions, we're really hoping to find long-term, cost-efficient solutions compared to harder alternatives. We're looking at actions that are context-specific, so really acknowledging the diversity of situations in the Pacific, across the region, across sub-regions, sometimes across countries, and even within islands. We are looking at actions that are community-based mostly, so they should really address community needs first, be designed with consent, information, and participation of the impacted communities. And an important co-benefit that is looked after by the donors and the Kiwa Initiative is really that these actions should not only include in their risk assessment, but really address in their design and in their outcomes the gender gap and aiming for gender equity, as well as the social inclusion of vulnerable populations. So examples of nature-based solutions, you've already asked many questions about specifics. So yes, ocean governance, marine local fisheries management are included in nature-based solutions. There are many types. Most of them are really ecosystem-based approaches, meaning that we are looking at the ecosystem level, its functions, habitats, and the services it provides. So there are many ways to classify them. In the diagram, we have 5. In Kiwa, we have 4 presented. So ecosystem restoration, for instance, through the control of invasive species, the reintroduction of native species, or the restoration of drylands at the landscape. We're also ecological engineering options are also eligible. For instance, the creation of artificial ecosystems called nurseries. For infrastructure related approaches are also eligible, such as reefs or mangroves for coastal protection instead of, for instance, seawalls. And then you have the more planning level actions, such as ecosystem-based management approaches, integrated coastal zone management, integrated water resources management. So Kiwa is already funding watershed level actions, or also ecosystem protections. So yes, marine protected areas do count as nature-based solutions for the Kiwa Initiative, but also other protected areas types such as forest conservation. The idea is still that with this environmental approaches, societal challenges should still be addressed, and that in the end, both human well-being and biodiversity's outcomes are reached. So, of course, although the term itself has gained really prominence in the last years, and you might not be all familiar with it, Espen will discuss this in a bit more details in a few minutes. But of course, we have a long history in the Pacific of actions and regional projects that aimed at ecosystems and community resilience to climate change. So you have, for instance, here a partner from the Rescue Project trying coconut stuffing. So the Rescue Project was coordinated by SPC until 2019. Here you have in the middle, we have an urban garden demonstration event in Vanuatu that was funded through the PBAC project. That was coordinated by SPREP until 2020. And on the right, you have the Wallis and Futuna Environment Service. And last week, they were awarded the Pacific Invasive Species Battler of the Year award for their work removing invasive species and plants, mostly rats and invasive vines from the islands using really minimal resources. And these actions were funded by the European Union through the Protège project that is co-coordinated by SPC and SPREP. So many of you, I'm sure, have either participated or heard about these projects, implemented other NBS without knowing it, everyone says. And so this is this legacy that we're seeking to build on with the regional projects, and this expertise and experience in managing large regional projects at SPC and SPREP that we're really looking to provide to interested stakeholders in the development of their concept notes and then in the development of the projects. And so this is why we're here. And this is it for nature-based solutions, I think. Yes, Espen, if you want to continue on NBS and COP26.
Yes, so thank you very much. I wanted just to highlight some of the issues that were discussed at COP26, and some apologies. I'm joining you from quarantine in Samoa, so I don't really have a lot of nice island shirts to wear today. Anyway, but at COP26, it was the first time that world leaders recognized the interlinked relationship between the global biodiversity crisis and the climate change crisis, and the critical role that nature plays in both adaptation and mitigation. And that recognition is there in the overarching decision of COP26. And it's also noted that to try and keep the global temperature rise within 1.5 degrees, that we have to establish concrete pathways towards delivery whereby all available tools are utilized, including ecosystem-based approaches or nature-based solutions. And it would be a missed opportunity if we did not pursue this as much as possible, together, of course, with all other mitigation and adaptation tools at our hands. Ecosystem-based, nature-based solutions have been given prominence within the guidance for national adaptation planning. However, I need to raise the point that there was discussion around the terminology. So in the Pacific, we've been quite comfortable using a lot of different ways to describe this. We've had ecosystem-based adaptation, ecosystem-based approaches, nature-based solutions. However, at the international negotiations, there was a lot of discussions around the use of the word solutions, because the knowledge, of course, is there that nature and ecosystems are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And there's also the issue about that there has to be an anthropogenic aspect, a human hand in these approaches, so that countries are not taking credit for what nature is already doing naturally. But this is one of the key reasons why you won't find a specific reference to nature-based solutions in the decisions, but you'll see a lot of decisions that, in any case, support the work that you'll be doing. So primarily, there were a lot of pledges and commitments around forestry, deforestation, and reforestation. Quite a lot of resources have been pledged, and this is important for the ecosystem-based projects that are being planned by you and others in the region, particularly those that are utilizing forestry approaches, avoiding deforestation, halting land degradation, and so forth. Because in a sense, you could view the Kiwa Initiative as a stepping stone to getting a major level of investment coming in for land degradation and ecosystem restoration in your countries and islands. So that was a positive step out of Glasgow. Similarly, funding for adaptation and mitigation. There's also been an overall increase in pledges and commitments on finance. So again, this relates to how the Kiwa Initiative can be seen as starting you on a longer term process. If you and your countries are able to also access some of the resources that have been set aside now for adaptation in particular. So all of these initiatives, SPC together with other crop agencies will be putting together a bit of a fact sheet so that we'll be able to discuss with members how those initiatives can be accessed for the purpose of benefiting the region. So in a nutshell, while the role of biodiversity, oceans, halting land degradation and restoring ecosystems was indeed given a high prominence, finance, pledges have been made, commitments have been made on all of these areas. I think we still have some way to go to really put nature-based or ecosystem-based approaches at the forefront. Although, as I mentioned, they are clearly articulated in the guidance on national adaptation planning. But I think my bottom line would be that whatever we do under the Kiwa Initiative, that we carefully document the outcomes and any challenges along the way, and that we utilize that to seek better financing solutions from those international funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Espen. We're really happy to take questions now, either on Espen's note or on the presentation on nature-based solutions, either by raising your hand or in the chat. Well, I don't see anyone. I think most of you must have asked a question during the first. Sorry, I have a question from Margot. How many projects have already been selected? So can you specify, because as Ludovic mentioned, there have been one call for local projects from IUCN and 2 calls for projects for the 20 and 21 call for regional projects. Is that what you meant, Margot? For the 2021 call for regional projects, the steering committee meeting took place last week. So that's where the donors select the successful applicants. And so the process is still ongoing. We should have the outcomes out very soon. And then how many projects approximately do you anticipate will be funded in this call? So yes, as I just mentioned, we know the overall envelope for now. And so we'll have a clearer idea very soon once we have the results from the 2021 call. And so it's OLF in. So I also invite you for examples of projects that have been previously selected. You can go on the Kiwa's website where some of them are listed. For instance, the project on the organic learning farms that SPC will be coordinating. We have another one, PBAC Plus, that will be coordinated from SPREP. So you'll be welcome to have a closer look. They're all on the Kiwa website. What's the turnaround time from application to approval? So the process, the whole procedure will be explained a bit more detailed by Ludovic just in a minute. But the selection committee takes place once a year. Regarding the local projects for 2021, this is also an ongoing process. So you'll hear about you'll hear from IUCN very soon. And so a question from Chris. It seems that the focus on NBS is aimed at projects involving habitat restoration and conservation. Were projects focused on developing sustainable food and fuel production from natural products for local communities fall within the scope of this program? So as Ludovic mentioned, and as I said, the activities should really clearly contribute to climate change adaptation. And so be nature-based, so based on nature-based solutions. So yes, sustainable food and fuel production would come under the scope of this program, I invite you then to have a look at, for instance, what Kiwa is funding under the OLF project, Organic Learning Farm, for instance. But this, yes, this can be considered as an NVS under Kiwa. Yeah, and I had a question from Miguel. Can restocking species for stock enhancement be considered a nature-based solution? So yes, same reply. As long as you can, as long as there is a clear link with climate change adaptation, these solutions would be eligible. And just to clarify, for fuel production, we are looking at biodiversity conservation outcomes as well. So yes, to clarify, yes, food production, yes, but fuel production, no. You're welcome, Miguel. I don't see anyone raising their hand. Would SPC assist applicants in developing the application forms? So thank you, Jonah, for your question. We'll be developing exactly in how this technical assistance can be delivered, but yeah, the answer is yes. So maybe then, thank you for the transition, Jonah. We can go on with the second part of our presentation that is really targeted on the call and on the application process itself. So you can see what support is available from SPREP and SPC. Ludovic, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mathilde. So now we would like to have a look at the submission process of your concept note, what's going on after the submission of the concept note until the signature. And we will have also a quick look at the concept note template, and I'm going to get back to some of the key criteria that will be looked with great attention. So next slide, please. So again, it's really important to remember the deadline for submission is April 4th, which means that we have 3 months in front of us, which is enough time, but still time running fast. So next call will be closed April 4th. In terms of the concept note, again, please have a look at the terms of references and the template on the Kiwa website. But the length of the concept note is restricted and limited to 15 pages. That's really important to keep in mind. We know it might be challenging to develop such a concept note and such regional project within such short concept note, but that's also a good exercise to summarize and to present very clearly what are the objectives, the activities, and the key aspects of the projects. These pages, including everything, the summary, the cover page, the logical framework, as well as the budget. If you feel that you have further information to join to the concept note, but that the template doesn't allow you to do so, you will be invited to provide some information as an annex of the concept note. You can do that definitely. If you have, for example, some previous feasibility studies or some more information about the background, the context, the activities, the stakeholders, and so on, you are invited to do so. It's a concept note. It's not a full project proposal. So we need to keep this in mind. We will understand that some of the project activities or some of the arrangements are not perfectly finalized. Maybe sometimes, of course, the most finalized it is, the better it is. But it's a concept note. Then, if the project is accepted, and we will see on this next slide later, you will have time to precise and to detail and strengthen this concept note. So it has to be clear and precise, meaning that the project structures need to be well understood with a clear overall objective, specific objectives, and activities that will contribute to reaching these objectives. We need to clearly see what the structure, the stakeholders, what the project will do. Again, the technical assistance is available. We encourage you to get in touch with us as soon as possible, to start with bilateral meeting, just to assess the relevance of your project or answer any specific question you have. We also expect to have not only the project leader to develop the project on his side, but we expect obviously a very good cooperation between the project stakeholders, the beneficiaries, and every person or entity involved in the project. And again, we are looking at regional projects, meaning that we must have a regional approach, clear, consistent with the activities. And even if the activities that will be implemented in 2 different countries or territories, for example, even some of the activities can be a little bit different based on the context. That makes sense. They must achieve the same overall objectives. And we are here to review and monitor your concept note to put you on the good path and give you advice about it. Next slide, please, Mathilde. So here is a look at the 5 key steps to submit your regional project, and I hope that will answer your question, Jonah. So on the 4th of April, the deadline for submitting your concept note, you can submit directly through the Kiwa Initiative website or AFD. You have all the information there. Then we have a steering committee, and the voting members will hold a steering committee in July to proceed with the evaluation step. And we expect to provide feedback to the project leaders by August, September 2022, following the steering committee. If your project receives favorable opinions, this means that the project is considered relevant with the Kiwa Initiative, and that the steering committee is looking at financing the project. So then it will start an appraisal process that you will conduct with AFD, and that will take about 6 months during the 2nd semester of 2022. And during this step, during the appraisal process, you'll be invited to detail some of the activities, provide some further information of some of the aspects that the steering committee has considered to not be as detailed or precise as they wanted to, or provide any type of additional information. And like I previously said, be invited to strengthen the concept note that will become a full proposal and then a grant agreement. Signature of the grant agreement will be done with AFD for any project leaders, and we expect a signature in early 2023, and then quickly after, the implementation will start. Next slide, please. So that's in the case the steering committee accepted your project, pre-accepted your project following the concept note submission. You can also receive a conditional opinion from the steering committee after the steering committee. And that means that the project is considered relevant, but they need additional information or some modification to the concept note in order to, in view of a resubmission of the concept note to a potential future call. And unfortunately, if your project received, let's say, red light, an unfavorable opinion, that means that the project is unfortunately not considered as a priority according to the Kiwa criteria, and your project won't go any further. Next slide, please. So on the right, on the slide, you can see like a quick overview of what the summary of the concept note. So you can see there is quite a few information detailed there, the sectors with the context and the main challenges. This is where you will be invited to specify what the context of the project is, what are the vulnerabilities, the risks in terms of climate change. Then you have the projects. With the project structure, what will be the overall objectives, the specific objectives, the geographic coverage, Who will be the main stakeholders and how these stakeholders will work together? What will be the procedures that will be put in place to ensure a smooth running of the project between these stakeholders? And also links with project with similar activity in the region, with programs, or also like with policy or regional frameworks. We want to see that your project is really well aligned with what is done in the region, and in order to avoid duplication, but also to increase forces and having more efforts between similar activities and exchanges of practices, for example. You have a section about the beneficiaries, the expected achievement, results, and impact also. You will have the monitoring and evaluation, what will be the indicators that you will be invited to detail within the logical framework, and the assumption and the risks and the budget. For the budget, it's really important to note that the maximum project management fee rate applied to any regional project for Kiwa is maximum 10% of the overall budget. You're invited to have like smaller management fees, but the maximum you can request is 10%. Like I already say, we need to clearly see what's the project structure, what are the components, and what are the objectives of the projects. You need to demonstrate the concrete impact in terms of climate change and biodiversity protection. You'll be invited to answer to some of sub-criterion within the concept note on climate change, on trajectory to low carbon emission, and you have 6 sub-criterion related to biodiversity and climate change adaptation that you must take pretty seriously within the concept note. The geographical scope also will be looked at with great attention. If you have any sector diagnosis to highlight in the concept note, you are more than welcome to do so. And also present the identification process, how the project leaders manage to put this project together. The project partners also will have to be presented. The financial plan, like I say, sometimes you might not be able to have like a very, very precise budget. That's fine, but at least we need to see what will be the big budget line. And we need to find with the members of the steering committee, we need to see what's the budget structure and find a balance between HR, admin costs, communication, and activities on the ground. You need to have a fair balance between those components. Because we're looking at some projects that needs to be scaled up, for example, if you have by any chance some feasibility studies or project outcome already available, you're invited to annex them to your concept note and refer to them within the template. For the logical framework, you'll be also invited to have a mix of quantitative and qualitative indicators. And we will be able to review this one during the concept note writing step. Thank you. Next slide. I think that was the last one, if I'm right. Yeah, thank you, Matthew. So if you have any question about the submission process or the concept note template, I will answer to them. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we have a question from Villamy. Using byproduct slag from Numea to build infrastructures that promotes NBS solution, is this something for consideration also? That can also be replicated in other peaks. Then we're looking at gray infrastructure, not really green infrastructure. They need to be looked at where the byproducts are coming from. It might be a little bit at the limit of the nature-based solution aspect, but I will be pleased to have a look, closer look at your project proposal for this. We have a raised hand from Anatira. So if you can take the floor. Yes, Anna? Anna, we can't hear you. Fer, maybe can you give the right to Anna, if not the case yet?
Sure, I've given her speaking rights. You can see that her microphone is unmuted.
Yeah, right. Anna, we can't hear you, sorry. While you fix maybe your microphone issue, I may take another question from the floor. We have Jonah asking us if there is a limit of the number of annexes. I would assume that details in the annex, if important to strengthen the concept note, should be mentioned in the main concept note text, right? Yes, there is no specific limit for the annexes. Of course, so that would be good to don't have like 100 pages of annexes, but all the important information that need to be addressed and highlighted will have to be in the main concept note. Then you can refer to the annex for further detail, of course, but we have to keep in mind that the concept note that will be looked at first, and then of course the annexes, but anything really important or that you feel relevant must be within the concept note. And then after we have like the additional information. And again, the concept note is limited to 15 pages. So you need to be very, very precise. It's not an easy exercise, but at least it enables us to get like a clear view of what the project is. And I'm sorry, yeah, we still can't hear you. In case maybe you can write down your question in the chat if we don't find any issue for it. Okay, so I'm taking another question from the floor from Estelle, who's asking what's the available budget for regional core. How many projects will be financed? We don't really know, actually. There is a competition. It will depend a lot about the number of projects that will be received. Like you mentioned, Estelle, it will depend also about the amount requested from the budget. So obviously, if we have only project requested the maximum grant of 5 million euros, you will have less. If there is more interesting project with smaller budget, we have more, but we don't have a clear view of it. We have to keep in mind that it's a very competitive process, a lot of interest for this Kiwa initiative, but we don't have a clear objective or any view of the number of projects that will be financed, unfortunately. We have a question also from Nicole, from One People, One Reef. Will this require letter of collaboration or participation or partnership explaining the body of the proposal? That's a very good question, Nicole. It's great, like we say, like we need to identify the identification process in the concept note. How you get into, how did you manage to have this project ID and develop this project ID together? And also the involvement of local authorities, it's pretty important. So as much as you have proof of agreement or with local authorities, for example, or if you're already able to sign some memorandum of understanding or letter of agreement with project partners, it is really good to mention so. It means that we will save some time later in the process and you will be invited to annex these letters. But yeah, it will be a very good point for previous projects submitted to the 2021 call. I remember that in some cases we had like also some recommendation or agreement letter, more or less, sorry, agreement letter from the line ministries of the countries targeted. And that's a good plus to see that national authorities have been targeted, have been consulted, and they agreed and they give their full support to the projects. We have another question from Jonah. Is there a requirement from the project to indicate expertise as part of the key personnel or resources? Yeah, any expertise or any human resources involved in the project would be good to be listed to understand like who will be part of the project, who will do what, and who will be provided the expertise. You can have expertise in-house, but you can also go for outsourcing the expertise through consultancy, for example. That's also doable. So Anna, finally, you asked your question in the chat. So can SPREP and SPC apply for Kiwa funding? It's a big yes. We are eligible as crop agency in the region to apply for funding, definitely. I ask as SPC SPREP can identify projects as a result of the technical program and they sit on various committees. So yes, so we can apply on the behalf of our members. That's completely possible. And also part of the technical assistance, we can support project leaders if they have a project ideas in their countries and they're lacking some partnerships in the region. For example, we can help you to make the networking for the project also. Yeah, very good question again from Jonah about the gender equality. Is there a requirement from the project to indicate gender expertise specifically as part of the key personnel or resources? It's a big yes again. Gender and vulnerable groups also will be looked at with great attention. It's really important to don't have only like, so we can see sometimes just having a fair number of women participating. We want to see innovative approach and thinking out of the box a little bit. So if you do have specific staff for this component, I'm sure that will be very well perceived. And I encourage you to think about the gender aspect of the project and not minimizing it. That's really, really important. Patterson Shed, you asking if requirement for co-financing. It's not mandatory, but it's recommended. So maximum amount you can ask is up to 5 million euros, but you can increase the overall budget of your project in case you find co-financing. It will be very well welcome, but it's not mandatory. You can, of course, request a 100% funded grant from Kiwa. We don't have any more question or any more raised hand. So maybe I give back the floor to Mathilde for the fourth and last presentation of the day about the technical assistance. And we will have again a last Q&A session after the next presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Merci, Ludovic. Now I'll finish by presenting in a bit more details the technical assistance that's available from SPREP and SPC to the Kiwa Initiative and its target audience. So in November 2020, both SPREP and SPC entered into a financing agreement with AFD to provide technical assistance for national and local authorities, mainly of their eligible members. And so this technical assistance has two main objectives. The first one is to support the development and implementation of Kiwa-funded large regional projects. So the calls for regional projects that we're talking about today, but more broadly also to build capacities in the region to manage large regional projects and to integrate nature-based solutions into national or local climate change adaptation policies and strategy. And so together with SPC, as you can see with our team, Ludovic and I, we're really delivering this program jointly, and it's building on SPREP and SPC's complementary technical expertise. So for instance, SPC will be your relevant organization for projects that are more into agriculture or fisheries management, disaster risk reduction, whereas SPREP is the regional organization charged with the protection and management of the environment and the natural resources of the Pacific. And so you can always, if you need assistance, you can always contact either one of us or the Secretariat, and then we'll be happy to put you in contact with the relevant organization. And so, as mentioned, we are putting our expertise, but also our experience in managing, implementing, or executing large regional projects. I've mentioned a few of them before, and really we have all our corporate governance services and project management processes that we can put at the service of interested stakeholders, as well as our established partnerships inside and outside the region. So more specifically, our assistance for the development of Kiwa regional projects. So it's really in this framework that these two webinars are implemented. The first one is to support national and local authorities, mainly of our eligible members, to develop and implement Kiwa regional projects. And this support will be available throughout the project life cycle. So in the project development, we're here, as this is the most relevant at the moment, for the concept note submission support. But for successful applicants, and once projects have received a favorable opinion from the steering committee meeting, as Udo mentioned, they will then enter the appraisal process and will be there to provide assistance at the request of the Secretariat or AFD. This can be for feasibility studies, for instance, strengthening the environmental and social safeguards and monitoring system, and really to help project applicants that need it to develop a robust project full proposal until the signature of the grant. And once the implementation period starts, will still be available for monitoring and evaluation support, for instance. We'll be there to help build on lessons learned, network between actors, and really capitalize results for the large projects until project closure, and of course, after project closure, to ensure the sustainability of the resources. And so this support can be provided in many ways. It will be very much tailor-made, so really according to your needs and the requests we receive. So we're planning project design workshops, bilateral meetings. This is really the first step, I would say, to understand your needs and see how we can best help. So again, if you're interested, don't hesitate to contact either the Secretariat, Ludovic, or I, and then we can decide what's the best way. And it will probably be by first meeting with project leaders. It can also be meetings with national or local authorities to support them in coordinating with partners. And as was asked before, we're really happy to provide feedback on concept notes, for instance, so help you really address all the requirements that Ludovic presented. And again, we'll be very much as well available for partner search, for instance, or to help you identify co-funding opportunities. So that's really targeted to the Kiwa regional projects calls, so the 2022, 2021, and for now 2022. But we do realize that there are other funding opportunities. Espen has already mentioned some of them. Hopefully after COP26 and in the coming years, there will be many more to come. The Kiwa regional calls are very competitive. So the Kiwa Initiative really seeks to look beyond that and to have a really deliver a capacity building program that will seek to build the capacity of Pacific Island countries and territories, national and local authorities of or eligible members mostly, to develop and implement themselves nature-based, gender equal, and socially inclusive climate change adaptation and biodiversity conservation projects. So the idea really is to move to help the national and local authorities really manage the grants by themselves, so that there will be a direct agreement between the donors and the authorities for these regional projects, big projects, and we'll be there so through national and regional workshops or e-learning modules, thanks to a partnership with the Pacific Climate Change Center. So this is for projects as well, but a very important part of nature-based solutions is that to deliver really on climate change adaptation, they must have very much long-term support. And to help that, it is crucial that they are mainstream, so that it's really integrated into national and local policies and strategies. And so we'll really be available to support our members in developing that. And the aim is that really at the end of the Kiwa Initiative, all members in the national and local authorities of the PICTs, as well as practitioners and civil society, will be in a better position to access climate funding and to develop large projects. So we're really building this enabling environment. For capacity building program, we're still in the gaps analysis phase. We'll start designing it in the new year. So really, please look out for our activities. They'll be starting mid-2022. So all the information you should receive through the Kiwa newsletter, and I invite you again to sign up. We should also communicate a lot about that, so you're all welcome to participate in those activities. So that's it for me for the presentation of our technical assistance. Again, it will be very much tailor-made. I'm happy to take questions now, or is Vaina here? I don't see her in the participants. Well, I'm happy to take your questions now. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'll just go up to the chat. So do you consider any other climate change project proposal besides NBS? No, so thank you, Biliami, for your question. You know, the Kiwa call for regional projects are really targeting nature-based solutions. So we're really looking at actions that on ecosystems for climate change adaptation. So if you have other proposals for climate change, yes, I will advise to wait for other relevant calls from other donors. Thank you. I didn't see any other question on the chat or hands raised. You're always welcome to contact us after the meeting if you have any second thoughts and clarifications you would need. Well, if not, I will really would like to, on behalf of Ludo and I, thank you all for joining. Thank you for really this interesting discussion and all your questions. If you have any other, if you need more information, including downloading the concept note, you can access all of this on the Kiwa Initiative website. Please follow the Kiwa Initiative on the social media. They're very active and there's a lot of interesting content you can access. And of course, you can subscribe to the newsletter on the Kiwa website. The first one was just sent. So again, thank you very much. And please don't hesitate to contact either Ludovic at SPC, the Kiwa Secretariat at AFD, and myself at SPREP. Merci beaucoup. And today also many thanks to the interpreters and to the IT at SPC. And I think I can close the meeting now. Thank you all. The presentations will also be available on the Kiwa website soon if you need it. And again, you can always request the recording of the video. It should be available in a few days. Thank you very much.